We're back with another wonderful, awesome episode of the Wild Edible World podcast for you guys. I'm one of your hosts, Michael.
And I am Steve. Today we have a lovely little treat for you. We have Mr. JB Douglas of foraged.com. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael and Steve. So thanks for having me. I haven't been described as little in a very long time. That makes me feel so dainty. Thank you.
Yeah, we're big fans of you, JB. So just to talk a little bit more, give you a little bit more of an intro, you're a queer food forager, and you're based out of Ohio primarily. And right now you're working through your degree in your master's degree in sustainable food systems, right?
That's absolutely correct. I'm bouncing between a lot of different things right now, but it's always about foraged foods.
Yeah, working on the masters and then absolutely crushing it over at forage.com.
Yeah.
We try.
I was perusing a little bit earlier, and there's several things in my cart ready to go. So,
oh wow,
pretty pumped. I'm especially excited for next season that apple sampler bag from Red Kill Mountains.
Oh yeah, they do really, really cool work, and they. I may mention this before to you guys. They make like an apple molasses that is really killer. They're one of the few manufacturers of that still. It's a wonderful, like sweet and a little bit bitter, a little bit dark indigenous sweetener to use. I love it.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So let's start right off with like some of your work at forage.com. You're their first full-time employee, right?
Yeah, that's right. I joined the team about a year ago, about 9 or 10 months after they launched. And so my formal title is VP of Culinary and Community, but we are a startup, so I wear a lot of hats, just like the whole team does. We kind of tag team things as needed. But anything in the world of, marketing adjacent, all the recipe development and recipe design work, the food styling, photography work, community building and development work, anything I can do to support the foragers, farmers, and the small businesses on our platform, that's kind of my bag.
That's awesome. I have loved watching a couple of the videos of you working with the ingredients throughout the year. I enjoyed how particularly honest you were with the struggle with the pawpaw cake. And how interesting, and a little unconventional some of these ingredients can be, but also the result is so rewarding and delicious.
Yeah, that was a part of our collaboration with the Ohio Pawpaw Festival that we sponsored this last year. A total pawpaw fanatic. I think a lot of us foragers are. So fascinated by the history of it. Love working with it as an ingredient. I will say I am probably not making a cake anytime soon again. There's so much labor that already goes into developing a recipe or recreating one, and then making it a cake that's like several multi-step is a challenge, and then working with a fresh piece of fruit that is finicky to peel and deseed is a challenge, and then layering in all the photography of it and the stops and starts of it was really that it was an all-day ordeal, and it was not my favorite shoot day at Foraged.
And then trying not to devour the pawpaws while you're doing it. That would be my challenge. I love pawpaw.
Yeah, it's so like I have learned that if you see a bunch of pawpaws for sale somewhere, cultivated or wild, a lot of people go for the quarts that have the really big fruits in them, and I have learned that it is best for me to buy the quarts that have all the tiny fruits, because then I'll just peel one and have the one. If I have all the big ones, I'm just going to be like half pawpaw by the end of the day.
Half pawpaw, yeah. 50% body content of pawpaw.
Correct.
I hear you. Also, I feel like maybe the little ones kind of have a little bit better of a fruit to seed ratio.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, pawpaws are one of my favorite things that I foraged this year. But what was one of your favorite things that you foraged, or that you received through your job?
Yeah, I have so many answers to this question. one of the things that actually like sticks out to me, since we're talking fruits and specifically berries, since papas are berry, is this season was like a Juneberry mulberry season for me and a wineberry season. June's like Ohio berries were going nuts this season, and it really filled my soul. I was harvesting them nonstop and dehydrating so many and freezing so many, and it was such a joy to just have fresh local berries for like the whole season. So that really comes to mind as like top faves. I'm like down to the very last of my stash right now. So I'm holding out for June.
What's your stash, frozen or dried?
Now I probably have like a quarter cup of dried June berries, a quarter cup of dried mulberries, and like half a cup of dried frozen wine berries.
Nice.
We're really coming down to it.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good stash. Though.
It's still a
I
pretty
don't have
solid
any of that, so I'm 100% jealous.
So beyond as forager, as personally, I enjoy foraging because of the I don't know, the carbon net neutrality of it and the like kind of pro-economic stance that it takes. And I was just curious how, like, yeah, it seems like a lot of your passions and your job focus is kind of in foraging foods. And I'm curious how you see foraging as a part of a sustainable food system. Do you think it's like, do you think it's an answer or the answer, or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's a lot of what I'm trying to tackle in my graduate studies. I always say that I am interested in sustainably and equitably developing the wild foods industry. And there's a lot that goes into that. We have to we have to further define, conceptualize like how we think about what makes a wild food. We have to think about what makes something an industry. We have to, and there's like so much intersectionality with foraging and environmental justice, racial justice, land justice, economic justice, hunger justice. There's just so much that happens there. A lot of what we're looking at in that program is like how is the food system currently contributing to climate change, and then what can we do to mitigate that, right? So for me, I'm really resistant to anyone or any ideas that purport to be some sort of magic bullet or single solution to the climate crisis or to food system reform, because they're so complex. I really believe that we're not going to have one solution. We're going to have, and we need a lot of micro solutions. We need a wide diversity of micro solutions. And it's why I kind of encourage people to find what interests them in the food space and in the climate space. Find a solution that feels like it can get you out of bed in the morning, and then go for it. I think action is always going to be more powerful than doubt or over analysis. And so for me, I see real potential in wild foods and understanding wild foods better. And I'm just going all in on that.
Yeah, just diving a little deeper into that one. So if you're new to this, you're new to foraging, maybe you've gardened with your folks or something along those lines. What do you think is a good first step? Do you think like a backyard garden, or what do you think are some basic like steps that our listeners can take to kind of help out?
Yeah, the two things that I kind of direct people towards when they're first like interested in foraging, the first to me, like I think today we often talk about foraging as this like activity that has a beginning, middle, and end. That there's like you go out, you do the thing, you come back. When the act of foraging and like the lifestyle of it, I think is really about connection with the land and knowing the flora and the fauna around you and the fungi around you more deeply, right? It's about this like human connection with nature and learning to feed yourself from the land. So for those reasons, like I tell people to just start with getting outside every day. Try to walk the same path every day. Notice what plants you notice, and notice how they change every single day. The more that you are out in nature, even if it is just, looking at the tree lawns on your sidewalk, even if it's just like the local park that's hyper landscape next to you, there are still complex ecosystems happening there that you can learn from and notice if you are out in nature every day and becoming attuned to it. So that to me is like the base. That's like the most accessible thing that each of us can do. The second thing that I recommend is to start with a history of the land and understand whose land you're on. And for us in North America, right, there's a deep history of indigenous cultures that have inhabited this place for centuries and centuries and centuries before colonizers came in here. Starting with whose land it is and understanding their value systems and being really rigorous about that research, to me, is the most important place to start. I think there are a lot of people that have like their own ways into the foraging and wild food space. Growing up in more rural, forested areas, or growing up in lower economic areas, and feeding themselves with parts of subsistence. But if you're somebody that is entering the space for the first time, I think you have a responsibility to start with the indigenous cultures of the area and knowing the land best. So those are my two things: get outside and learn the land.
Oh, hey, Steve.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Well, what's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just got this new water bottle, but it just looks so plain.
Well, have I got the store for you. Introducing the Wild Edible World Podcast Merch Store.
Wowie, wow!
It's the merch store where you can get all of your favorite podcasts merch for all your decorating purposes.
How do I find that?
Go to wildedibleworldpod.shopify.com or go to any of our Instagram and media accounts and view the link in the bio.
Wowie, wow! I think those are great points. I especially like the education component of that, and then also just the awareness and like presence in the moment, and then like in your surroundings. So like I'm immediately thinking of the property that my daytime job is on, and just walking that and seeing like wild grapes, and then maybe seeing some old crab apples growing on a tree and saying, I can't wait to try those next year. And that's just like a really good example of that, exactly what you're talking about, knowing your surroundings and then noticing the differences and how it's changing and the cool things you can find.
Yeah, I think that like familiarity with place and really getting to know your local environments over an extended period of time is really kind of quintessential to a complete human experience. To really like get that fulfilling, that nourishing feeling that I think we all get when we spend time outside, and bringing our food from that place is a part of that. And I like that you think of it as a continuing thing. Foraging isn't the act of going out, grabbing the food and taking it back. It's the everything in between and after too. It's the appreciation, the knowledge, the mindfulness, the respect, the love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the barrier to it for people is that it feels like there's a lot of rules to learn, and like I don't know the species, and I have so much to understand, and I have to get to this big park. And I just want to encourage people to take a step back and be like, I think you can just start with looking at the trees or looking at the weeds in your lawn. And I think that is like just as profound and important as, traveling from morel season to the West Coast.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the number of times I've said and recommended to people, like, the best place to start is your own, if you have a backyard, your own backyard. And if you don't have a backyard, there's still grassy areas around where you live, most likely. And those are diverse little microcosms. I started learning with basically a dandelion. That's a great first starting plant for anybody to kind of latch on to, and it's a really safe one too. So it's just, all it takes is just, not being so hard on yourself, like you said, taking a step back and just realizing that this is supposed to be fun and restorative as well as yummy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess we can talk a little bit more about some of the food that you've gotten through, that you've seen come across your way through forage.market. Like you talked about, or I guess it's .com now. Yeah. It's .com. Anybody watch Homestar Runner? But the apple molasses you brought up sounded really, really interesting. You said that's the only place that does this? Is it kind of like an ancestral technique or something, or what?
It's one of the few that produce and bottle and sell it still. But that's I have a really great privilege in my job. If we want to feature a product or we want to use it in a recipe, that food makes its way to my doorstep, so I can work with it. So I get to try a lot of different things from all over the country, which is really exciting and really inspiring. A couple of things that call out as exciting moments over 2022. A vendor of ours, Sergio, his business is named SC Specialties. He's out in New Jersey. Does all sorts of really cool experimental forest farming work. He made elderberry capers this year, from the actual the bud of the elderflower before it opens up. And those were just so tasty. I literally had them in the sauce. I put them in a sauce that I made at lunch today. They taste like a clean caper with just that little bit of extra interest, that little bit of a surprise. And they're slightly smaller than a traditional caper, which I really appreciate. I like that that kind of caviar-like texture. So that's an example that always comes to mind when I think about what's on the site. Another one that on the fresh produce side, I'm a huge fan of Greenbrier. I don't know if you guys do you guys have Greenbrier up where you're at?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that was an earlier species for me on my list. When I was in Boston. And when I saw a vendor listed it who had it down in Georgia, I was like, oh, I wonder if it tastes different. And it was so sweet. And the tendrils were so they were 2 feet long and still tender.
Wow.
It was really delightful and wonderful. And I made a polenta with Greenbrier and some other, I think, ramps or some other spring greens on top. But that was a delight to be able to see some different species, but same genus, taste so differently in different locations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really fascinating, and that this company has kind of arisen in a way to be the kind of fulcrum point for a lot of different coasts to interact with each other, and yeah, it's really fun. And the idea of elderflowers as capers is really, really fun to me. Have you ever made or had Saint Germain, the elderflower liqueur?
Oh, have I? Yeah, I'm a huge. I am
a bit of a flush.
Such a sucker for botanical and floral flavors. When someone says something tastes like soap to them, that's what I'm like. Oh, I'm gonna love it.
I love that attitude.
I really love it, and I love grassy flavors too. And yeah, it's so funny to me when people say something tastes like grass or something tastes like soap as a negative connotation, and to me that's such a moment of delight. We actually have a newer vendor that joined us at Mucky Boots Farm. They're down in Southern Ohio, and they have a elderflower syrup and an elderflower and then an elderberry syrup. Also really delightful. Really cool practices too. They've been restoring what had previously been a cattle farm to like back to native prairie and then planting perennial berry crops. But their elderflower syrup is delicious. Highly recommend.
That's really, really awesome.
And then your vendors that you mentioned, how lucky for them to find a great place like forage.com. You guys do like a 90-10 split, 90 going towards the vendor and then 10 coming back to you just to cover expenses, I'm sure. I just think that's a really cool thing, and like what an awesome way to spread the knowledge and then also provide for people, you know?
Yeah, we're really intentional about that. Our CEO has his background is in like corporate sustainability, and all the rest of the team are foragers or ex-farmers ourselves. So we really get the labor and the time and the passion that goes into actually producing these foods, and we get why you don't want to come home at the end of the day and take photos and figure out SEO and listing and like deal with website developers or any of that. Like we handle all of that so they can focus on doing what they need to do. And that 10% just goes right back into building the features that our vendors ask for. It's also part of what's so great about having a platform that is built for, small food producers. Is they're not trying to make a platform fit their needs. They get to ask us, tell us what they need, and then we get to go back and try to figure out how to make that happen for them. It's endlessly inspiring to be able to talk to them every day and just see what's coming up next for them in their world.
Do you guys sell live plants or like root stocks at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We love cultivation and cultivation supplies, and we work with quite a few vendors that again are in the experimental like forest farming spaces, or are really into reforesting with like native plants. So if, for example, we've got spring's on its way, there's a lot of challenging conversations out there about ramps and the sustainability of harvesting ramps. If you're one of those people that feel strongly about harvesting wild ramps, the good news is you can buy ramp seeds or plantable ramp bulbs from other foragers or cultivators on the site, and that way you can like start your own patch or help to replant those species in patches where they've maybe taken a hit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a really valuable service. A lot of people don't really know where to get them, how to get that stuff. So just having a website with the word foraged in it and it's providing all that stuff is really, really helpful. And just other foragers too, just having it be kind of like a little database of other wild food peoples to just kind of get to know each other and notice that it's great feeling not alone and seeing how many other businesses across the country are doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, we're really excited about growing into having more community resources and programming that will connect everyone to each other better, and provide spaces for them to communicate easier. It's growing every day, and there's a lot on the horizon for Foraged. But that is definitely part of my vision and my work, both at this company and in school, is seeing a coalescing of the wild foods community, and trying to get this on the same page and organizing together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you come from kind of an interesting and unique background, I think, with a lot of your experience with just the time I've known you and your time in wild food. But before that, I think last time we talked, you mentioned that you had spent a lot of time working on an organic farm, or like a couple different organic farms, pretty small farms too.
Yeah, so my background originally was in experiential and site-specific design for theater. So I was doing like crazy props and set building and set design work. And I got a little burnt out of that. And one day, through this, a bunch of funny stories with a bunch of funny people, I was encouraged to follow what was making me, more fulfilled in the moment. And I was like, and I had reached a breaking point. I was like, it's time to go to food. So I quit my theater career pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And I went to go shop at a farmer's market and saw that one of the farms was hiring for a cashier retail position. And I was like, can I have a job? And they were like, yes, indeed. And that just snowballed into so much. I went into it thinking that would just be a part-time thing. But I really learned so much on those farms. They had like brick and mortars in a public market, and learning about food access, especially as it relates to public health, food education, SNAP and healthy incentive programs, and as it relates to small regenerative farms and small organic farms. And it was just endlessly fascinating to see the way that food can be a driver of economic mobility and social mobility and environmental justice. The way that we can put dollars towards getting good foods to lower income people is a direct benefit to bettering the land and bettering local economies.
Preach. Hell yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of, and then whenever you're in places like that, it's hard to realize sometimes that like not everywhere is like that. There's pretty important places doing really important outreach, and it's so inspiring. But we need more of that.
Yeah, we absolutely do. That was kind of a shocking moment in like my graduate studies right now. Is I had this revelation that the farms that I was working for, so to shout them out, Sienna Farms and Stillman Farm, I'm out in Massachusetts. I had this epiphany that they were doing a lot better work than most other farms out there. I didn't realize how bad the labor justice was on a lot of other farms. But we absolutely need to see more of that. We need, open source information about regenerative practices. We need better, we need better subsidies and grants for that work. We need better access for people of color entering the farming space and access to land. There's a lot to do, but I'm feeling pretty hopeful based on what I'm seeing happening out there right now.
Yeah, I think we're pretty hopeful too. The energy and the excitement in novel ways of solving this food crisis, and I think it's kind of confusing to think about why we're so focused on finding a single answer that just helps everybody when we're not taking into account that the sheer diversity of human beings requires an equally diverse set of answers, and how much stronger of a foundation that really makes everything, and how much safer it could be. So yeah.
I totally agree. And that's, this is why I'm like really thankful for seeing podcasts like yours that are, centering wild foods and native species in the conversation, because to me, we have to start with the land, and the people that understand land best, in my experience, are the foragers. The foragers are the conservationists. The foragers are the ones thinking about food and preservation and seasonality. And I think that we as a community have real responsibility and potential to move the needle.
Yeah, real potential. You're absolutely right. I think in our last attempt to record this episode, we talked about how foraging hasn't quite reached the mainstream whenever everybody was like listening their end of year TikTok subcultures or whatever. Forage talk wasn't on there, but I just saw today that Miss Black Forager Alexis Nichols is going to be on Jimmy Kimmel tonight.
Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy?
So exciting.
Yeah, I'm so delighted that her star has continued to rise. Like, there's nothing I want more.
Seriously.
Yeah, I think it's a great sign for the future of what we've got coming.
Exactly. That's. I feel very similarly. This has been a really, really inspirational talk. We really thank you for joining us and enlightening our show with a lot of your really knowledgeable topics.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah.
I just want to throw a little Illinois shout out. So you said you like floral liqueurs. Have you ever had Malort before?
I don't think I have.
Oh,
That's what I was going to bring that up, dude. Yes.
All right. Well, soon,
if you like
soon,
botanical
my friend,
liquors,
soon.
oh boy, you're in for a Chicago treat.
Wait, spell it for me.
M as in Michael, ALORT.
Okay,
Like
I
your
will check it out. What's the flavor?
wormwood
Yes.
Ooh.
and licorice.
Oh, yes.
It reminds me a lot of grapefruit rind.
Yeah, well, okay,
Ooh.
so there's a little bit of I'm not to disparage a beverage that we
I love it.
that we very much love. It's very different from bottle to bottle. Their quality control is pretty meh because I've had drinks from two different bottles in the same night, and the first drink was like, oh, this is amazing. This is what all bottles should. And then the next one was like skunky and weird. So
They also do different like barrel agings and things like that. I think Malort's pretty consistent personally.
okay, all right. You certainly probably drink more of it than I do.
Yeah, I've
so
definitely probably had a little bit more. But yeah, it's something that is local around these parts, but it's moving a little bit.
yeah, it's a legendary liqueur around here.
And we'll have to bring some
I
to our
can't
first
wait.
hangout.
It's definitely something you share with your friends. So consider yourself a friend of the show.
I'm delighted. And oh, you know what? Actually, now we say friend of the show. I have recently learned that I was the first owner of a Wild Edible World pin, and I would encourage anyone listening to go and get one of those pins because they are sick.
Thanks so much. We
Appreciate
really
that.
appreciate your support. You've been a real one from day one.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're absolutely welcome. We'll have to have you back again. And until then, this has been the best show to find the best food for free, be it curbside, low tide, or trailside. See you next time. That was the wonderful JB Douglas.
How fun was that?
It was the most fun, twice over.
What a guy.
What a guy. Super knowledgeable, pretty thoughtful, really awesome photographer. So
Some of the most beautiful food I've ever seen.
yeah, I love we talked about this last time in the episode that never was, but his juxtaposition with color and his food. I really love the attitude he brought to wanting to see more colorful representation of these ugly but delicious foods, and still being able to make that, something that's attractive to look at. So check out his Instagram for sure at jbdouglas.food. And that's only one letter in all of those except for food. So don't repeat the S, jbdouglas.food. And then check out where he works, which is foraged.com.
Yeah, that place is rad. Seriously, I didn't know they did like live plants as well.
Yeah.
And like rootstock. I'm gonna go on there probably in the parking lot.
Yeah, there's probably a really good potential throughout the year to get some like really, really interesting plants. A lot of the businesses that they work with and foragers that they work with are very reputable. They have a whole process that they go through in vetting everything. So highly recommend that. So yeah, thanks for listening to another awesome episode. We love you guys. And let us know. Send us a DM if you guys have any recommendations on who you guys would like to hear on the podcast. And we'll see if we are cool enough to reach them. We'll try and get an interview with them. So let us know.
Bye.
Bye.